Did someone just say I'm a Christ supremacist? And I am a white
Hey guys, welcome back to another epic and fruitful endeavor on my channel. Today, I'm going to be, attempting to form a coherent argument as to why I think modded Terraria is better than its vanilla counterpart. I'm terrible at intros, if you couldn't tell, so I'm just gonna get straight into the video. Whenever a player starts a new Terraria world, they're met with the following hotbar: a small plethora of copper tools at their disposal, including a copper short sword, a copper axe, and a copper pickaxe. One of these tools, coupled with the lack of others, poses a major problem for progression and the natural Terraria gameplay. In Terraria, there are 4 classes. It doesn't make any intuitive sense that whenever there are 4 classes at the average Terrarian's disposal, the game only provides the player with the starting tools for one of those classes. By this, of course, I'm referring to the copper short sword being a melee weapon. The fact that the player spawns in the world with only a melee weapon at their disposal, and is either forced to cheat in the other class weapons necessary, or go to obtain the other weapons through other means, such as exploring living trees or mining underground for ores and gems, is ridiculous in my opinion. Terraria has 4 unique balanced classes that are only at their most powerful whenever the player is fully spec'd out in order to play their desired class. If someone were to mix class weapons and armor together, they'd be less powerful as opposed to more powerful. So why is it that the player is forced to do this in the early game? Many content mods for Terraria, such as Calamity, which I'll be using as the standard for content mods in this video as it's the most popular content mod for Terraria and is all around agreed upon to be the best one out there for many Terraria players, gives players treasure bags to spawn in with. These bags come with the bare essentials to play whatever class they desire, as well as some other goodies that will further help them in early game progression, which I will mention momentarily. Items like a marginal amount of mana and life crystals, some basic buffs, and of course, some basic class weapons. Now, I'm not even trying to imply that they have to make starter bags native to vanilla. All I'm saying is that they should at least provide some way for the player to either have class neutral weapons off spawn, or they should provide the player with means to acquire class-based weapons before they have to explore and forage for them. Additionally, as I briefly mentioned previously, the early game Terraria progression is unreasonably difficult and not in a fun or sexy way. The game forces the player in a vanilla version to painstakingly walk around at a measly 1 mile an hour while they forage for life crystals, mana crystals, ores, and gems. This is not fun gameplay. Just because something is difficult and time consuming doesn't mean that it's good. In some cases, granted, it can be. However, the task that you're spending so much time doing has to be difficult in an engaging and fun way. There's nothing engaging about walking through a beginning cave over and over again because you keep dying to the same salamander that's killed you and taken all your money 8 times. Starter bags that are in most content mods fix this issue, because content mods offer you useful and arguably mandatory accessories early on in game's progression. The player is able to move on to more fun parts of the game quicker, such as fighting enemies and bosses and obtaining sweet, succulent game progression, instead of just rotting away in some cave because it's been 4 hours and all you've managed to find is 4 extractinators and a flare gun. As I mentioned in the previous segment about early game progression, Terraria, by nature of being a sandbox game, is grindy. By this I mean that it's time consuming to make progress. However, progress can be achieved in a multitude of ways, making the game still fun for many types of players. There are some essentials though. Some items and sections of Terraria gameplay are inevitable and need to be completed to continue playing the game. Especially if you're playing higher difficulty game modes. You need to max out your accessories and equipment in the game, as well as obtain a fair amount of potions for progress. Potions, however, need many strange and quirky ingredients to craft, such as the endurance potion, needing a fish that can only be obtained from fishing underwater for 17 hours while you contemplate your existence and whether or not it's still ethical to support Kanye West. Or the gravitation potion, a potion that still allows you A potion that allows you to travel to the sky early game and achieve its sweet succulent loot, like pink sword and pigeon wings. Naturally, this potion must have a perfectly reasonable recipe that could not at all require an item from the sky biome, the place that is only reachable through usage of this potion in the first place. Gosh darn it. Well, at least I can rely on the perfectly reasonable recipe for the Spelunker potion. I'm gonna do it! I'm going to do it! Thank God that vanilla Terraria must have some easier way to obtain these items. Maybe some NPC that sells potions would be the natural thing to remedy this, right? Right? Of course not. We're playing vanilla. With mods like the Alchemist NPC mod, you can obtain potions easier, and it allows for natural progression of gameplay to take place without it being slowed and elongated by unreasonable task of collecting potion ingredients. Not to mention the discrepancies with game modes in Terraria, ranging from ridiculously easy to fake creative mode. Terraria developers just don't seem to know how to create game modes correctly. Of course, a broken clock is right twice a day, I think that's how the saying goes, because Master Mode and Expert Mode are both very good game modes that I think should be more recognized by Terraria players as superior to the other two game modes. For example, Normal Mode offers basically no reason to play it, as it removes all of the difficulty from this kid's game and makes it into just another town-making simulator. The enemies and bosses are barely a threat, and with Terraria being an open-world sandbox where you can do whatever you want, you don't really have any motivation to make any forward progress. And while I'm not trying to say that players who are worse at the game should just not play the game, I am proposing that Terraria is obviously meant to be a relatively challenging game, where its challenging boss fights and difficult game progression is where the game shines, and if you're a player that isn't looking for that style of gameplay, then there's just other games out there than Terraria. But in my humble opinion, Normal Mode should be the easy mode of Terraria, or at least it should be called that, whereas Expert Mode should just be set to the normal mode, and Master Mode should be considered the expert difficulty option. Expert Mode is only marginally harder than Normal Mode and offers so much more gameplay options to the player. I mean, how do Normal Mode players even function without the Shield of Cthulhu? Normal Mode just bars off gameplay features that are essential to the gameplay experience in my opinion, and is not even justified as it's not much less difficult than Expert Mode. Don't even get me started on Journey Mode either. I don't know about other people, but when I first heard that Terraria would potentially be getting its own creative mode, similar to Minecraft, I was so excited. I could finally have a character set aside to use to be able to cheat in items without having to log into some janky server or download some strange world from a sketchy website in order to cheat in class-specific items that I should spawn in with, and I could instead use this new creative mode. You can imagine my dismay and shock whenever I discovered that the game mode we got was instead some cheap knockoff of creative mode that went halfway and some kind of delivered. I mean, it's alright, all things considered, however it could have been so much better. I'm not entirely sure why they didn't just implement a full-on creative mode where cheating in items and changing the game rules was made fully available, like the cheat sheet mod for example, but this game mode is the most strange and odd middle ground I could think of as an alternative. Instead of having access to all the items in the game, the player is forced to obtain the items legitimately, and then and only then are they allowed to cheat in the items by duplicating them. This makes no sense to me personally. Like, I kind of understand not wanting people to cheat in your game, however, it's also their game that they bought, and it doesn't really figure to make them have to download third-party solutions to cheat in items because you didn't want them to. What do the developers even have against cheating in items? It's not like it would hurt them at all. Terraria does support multiplayer, but it's not directly supported by Redigit, and doesn't change anything if someone wants to cheat in items for their own personal server. This strange, janky middle ground just isn't doing it for me. The unconventionalness and sometimes straight up lack of forethought that's put into Terraria bosses is also strange to me. Like, Redigit Studios is actually one of my favorite games companies, and I really think that their developers are some of the most talented game devs that I can think of off of the top of my head, which is why it's so unfortunately astounding to me that there was little to no thought put into some of the balancing and time spent on these bosses and events. For example, there's King Slime, who, like most other bosses in the game, does not not have any conventional patterns or phases or anything else like video game bosses. It instead is basically just treated like a regular enemy, and King Slime Fails to Deliver is an interesting boss fight that players can learn to overcome through the use of memorization and pattern recognition. The players are instead flipped off by the developers as King Slime makes the most spontaneous decisions out of any video game boss ever and decides to teleport directly into the player's hitbox for the 6th time in a row. The inconsistency and lack of memorizationable patterns in like half of Terraria bosses makes the game incredibly annoying at times. It's confusing to me that the same people who coded the Empress of Light boss fight, a genuinely amazing boss fight and one of the most enjoyable video game boss fights that I know of, with patterns and sound cues and animation cues, etc., coded the King Slime fight. A still admittedly fun fight, just not really a boss fight in a traditional sense. This is where modded Terraria comes in. Not only do content mods like Calamity provide the player with the freedom of more bosses to fight, but they also alter vanilla bosses and fix a lot of the issues I have with them. For example, in Calamity, King Slime is provided with phases, more features, and attack patterns, and just some balance tweaks that generally fix my grievances with the fight. This not only makes the game better in a traditional sense, but it also makes bosses like King Slime, a boss that may well have been overlooked by most players who have fought his vanilla variant, to actually consider strategy and skill when fighting his modern counterpart. All things considered, Terraria is a very good game, and obviously the solution to these issues is not to just not play the game. So what does the average Terrarian turn to? Team Mod Loader is one of many ways to put mods into your Terraria. However, Team Mod Loader just makes the process a little bit more streamlined and straightforward, so your average 10-year-old doesn't accidentally download a virus or end up on orange and black YouTube while trying to download Calamity onto his copy of Terraria. Team Mod Loader functions exactly like Terraria. You launch the app, and when it finishes loading, you're literally just playing regular Terraria. The only difference is there's now a baked-in mod loader that allows you to download mods into the game window, and then apply them into your copy of Terraria. The mod browser in-app runs off of Steam, so you have access to all of the Terraria community has to offer, and it's magnum opus. You don't even have to be playing modded to use Team Mod Loader. You could literally play vanilla Terraria on Team Mod Loader, and you would have the exact same experience with the same performance as real vanilla. This means that there's basically no reason to use the vanilla launcher, as with Team Mod Loader you have vanilla Terraria and modded Terraria in the same location. Of course you have to buy Terraria from Steam for Team Mod Loader to work, however this shouldn't be an issue if you're already this far into the video. It's really just pointless to play Terraria without quality of life mods turned on, but if for whatever reason you still want to play vanilla every once in a while, you have the availability to. Anyways guys, with that I'm gonna wrap up my video because I don't really have any other points to make, and I don't want to keep digging into Terraria as it is one of my favorite games of all time. If you disagree with anything I said in the video, I'd like if you left a comment so that I get pushed in the algorithm. I really don't care for your opinion, but I would love to see a comment. Anyway, yeah, that's all I have to say. Alright, bye.